I find it quite unbearable, and I think it is a sign of climate change. London is not a city that's meant to be hot.
Temperatures not only set to break June records here, but could get very close to an all-time record as well.
But even now I went to the shop, there's like no water in the shops, it's all like really hot.
The local paper Nice Matin saying heat is coming for us.
El Nino is not just knocking on the door, it risks blowing the house down.
Red heat alerts indicating a potential danger to life have been issued across parts of the UK, France, Italy and Spain. Over the next 10 minutes, we're going to tell you how long these kinds of temperatures will last, how dangerous it could be, how to stay safe and whether El Nino is to blame. Well, straight to our climate reporter, Esme Stallard. And Esme, tell us what is actually going on.
In this particular heat wave, what we've got is effectively a static area of high pressure, and it's just sitting over Europe at the moment, and that's trapping all the heat underneath. At the same time, we're getting winds pulling up hot air from northern Africa, which is making it even hotter, and it might even feel worse than normal heat waves, and that's because the humidity is so high at the moment, which is making it really hard to sweat. But it's worth reminding people these types of frequent heat waves at these levels of temperatures are just not normal, and very much climate change is driving these types of events.
Esme, back to you in just a second, because I want to talk to you about these comments from the UN Secretary-General earlier today.
Climate disasters are becoming more frequent, more destructive and more costly. And the World Meteorological Organization has warned we ain't seen nothing yet. El Nino is not just knocking on the door, it risks blowing the house down.
So, Esme, how much is El Nino to blame for all of this?
Well, let's just recap on what El Nino is. Effectively, it's a natural weather phenomenon that we get every sort of 2 to 7 years. Effectively, what happens is natural winds change their pattern and we get a shift of hot water into the central and eastern Pacific. But that change, very far away from some people, can change weather patterns all over the world. Now, there isn't a strong link to heat waves in this particular region of northern Europe, but it does drive up heat, particularly in Southeast Asia and Australia, and we're going to be keeping a close eye on how that might affect them in the coming months.
And how much hotter could it actually get?
Well, I mean, over this week, we're expecting temperature records to fall across Europe and within the UK, not just daytime temperatures, but also nighttime temperatures. And that really affects the ability of the body to cope with this. But the Met Office, the UK Met Office, has pointed out that we are going to anticipate that these temperatures for our summers will continue to rise in the coming decades. They think within the next 20 years, it will be normal for us to get temperatures in the early 40s for repeated summers. So climate change is very much changing how summer can be for people living in the UK and in Europe.
It really is. Esme, thank you. Some parts of Spain have made entry to swimming pools free for the duration of the heat wave, with water fountains and sprinklers also running uninterrupted throughout the day to help people actually cool down. Our correspondent, Guy Hedgecoe, sent this from Madrid.
It's very unusual to see very high temperatures up in the north of the country. We're going to see temperatures of up to 40 degrees in the Basque Country in the north. That's normally one of the coolest areas of Spain. So that comes as a real shock for people up there. Now, the Basque Country is one of the areas that is introducing special measures to deal with the heat at the moment. For example, using these so-called heat refuges. Now, that's public buildings like churches or libraries or civic centres which have air conditioning, where people can just go in at the hottest part of the day and sit down, have a drink of water and wait until the hottest part of the day has passed.
Well, that's Spain. Let's cross to France. They've recorded the hottest ever night and June day since records began almost 80 years ago, with more than half the country in the maximum red alert zones. Although there's also been a stark reminder of the potential dangers of trying to keep cool in the heat. Over 40 people have drowned in heatwave-related deaths in the last 5 days in France, with officials warning against swimming in unsupervised areas. Hugh Schofield is our correspondent in Paris.
Yeah, there's really nowhere in the country of France today that is escaping this punishing heat wave. Half of the country, more than half the country, is in the red alert zone. That's the maximum alert zone for heat waves, which means essentially that, that there is a danger to life from excessive exposure to the heat. A lot of people are cooling off in rivers, in pools at the seaside, that's bringing with it its own set of problems. And then there's this terribly distressing story from the south of France on Monday with 2 siblings aged 2 and 4 getting stuck in their family car and dying of heat suffocation. So there's a real sense in the country that this is very, very serious, that we have to adapt and essentially stay inside as much as possible until it eases off, which won't be till the end of the week.
Well, let's bring in Pierre-Antoine Denis, who's our reporter in the south of France. And Antoine, the south of France is used to hot weather, but how extreme is all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, it's quite surreal in a way that it's very early on in the year. That's what people have been telling me here. We are used to the heat here in the south of France, but not to that level and not that early on in the year, from people trying to get their end of year exams to people working to people in care home. Everyone's been telling me this is not normal. Obviously, being close to seaside like here, people have been able to cool off, but there are more landlocked areas of France, especially in this region, that have been suffering from temperatures well above 40 degrees. And with the record for the night, the hottest night last night, then the weather authorities here in France are saying that much more records could fall, including the fact that tonight could be another hotter night here in France. So everyone's been bracing for a very, very warm night and evening here in France, both in the south but across the country as well.
Pierre-Antoine, thanks very much. So lots of questions on how to keep cool and to keep safe. Let's bring in our medical editor, Fergus Walsh. And Fergus, I'd like to just rattle through some of our most asked questions online over the next couple of minutes, starting with, how does the body actually respond to these extreme heat temperatures?
Yeah, Matthew, well, a bit of physiology here for you. Whether it's -10 outside or +40, your body wants to keep an internal body temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius. And in extreme heat, it does this initially by something called vasodilation. That means blood vessels near the surface of the skin widen, and that blood flow, that heat, is released. Now that causes the blood pressure to drop, which can potentially be dangerous if you have a heart condition, and it makes the heart beat faster. Then the sweat glands come into play, and water and salt are released. They go to the surface and they give off heat and energy, and so cool the skin. But that can be tricky in humid conditions, which is what we have at the moment, more difficult for that to evaporate. Now, taken together, they can lead in extreme cases to heat exhaustion, where you can be sweating heavily, have pale, clammy skin, be dizzy or confused. Now, the advice there from the NHS is very clear. If somebody looks like they have heat exhaustion, move them into the shade, remove any excess clothing, give them water and cool down their skin. But if they haven't recovered within 30 minutes, they may have heat stroke, and heat stroke is a medical emergency. And the signs there are that a very high temperature, the body's internal mechanism is not working. They may no longer be sweating. They may be fainting or even vomit. And that can apply in this red heat warning, not just to those who are particularly vulnerable, like babies, the elderly, if you're pregnant or you have a heart or lung condition. That can apply to anyone who stays out in the heat too long.
You mentioned babies. There are a lot of vulnerable groups. So what can people do to keep babies safe in these sorts of conditions?
Well, one of the pieces of advice is, if your baby's in a pram or a cot, don't cover it with a blanket or a cover. Use a parasol, because otherwise the hot air gets trapped. The thing about babies in particular, and also to a certain extent young children, is their internal body clock, their body temperature regulation, I should say, which is controlled by the hypothalamus, is not fully set up yet. And so they're much more vulnerable. And of course, with babies, they can't move themselves into the shade. So they're particularly vulnerable. And obviously, they should never, even for a second, be left alone in a car. And that applies to anyone in this hot weather. When it comes to all of us, if you're at home and you don't have something like air condition or fans, you should pull the curtains on the side of the house that faces the sun. And then only at night, when it's potentially cooler, open the curtains and the windows to get some kind of current of air through. And then obviously really simple, obvious things, but worth saying, stay out of the sun, stay in the shade, and stay hydrated. Wear loose-fitting clothing with cotton or linen fibres, light colours, and keep an eye out for the vulnerable.
Fergus, thanks very much. Well, time's up. That's all you need to know about the heatwave in Europe.